by now you've measured and created a couple parts in AutoCAD. Our next step is starting to apply dimensions to these parts. If you look in your text on Cengage, our next section will be called print reading. We're going to study that, but at the same time we're basically going to be the ones making those prints. So to start out, we're going to start just doing some simple dimensions. We'll get into tolerancing as well. But like I said, for now, we'll just start with how to use the dimension tools and how to properly apply them to parts. If you look in your textbook, the other textbook, the Engineering Graphics Essentials, Chapter 7 goes over dimensioning in greater detail. We'll keep that open too as we do this. Page 720 on Chapter 7 has a list of rules to follow when you're dimensioning. They're not something that you can do all the time, but it's something to kind of guide you as you dimension. So I have this very simple part that is available for you to try as well. I'm going to make some modification to it after I do my first set of dimensioning, just to add some more information on how to do particular features. So when we do our dimensioning, we're going to always do them in the letter tab, the drawing paper space. So to get started with dimensioning, it's just DIM for dimension, or come up to in your home tab, there's dimension, and also there is the annotate tab with even more options for dimensions. I'm going to just use my type in command, dim. Now I had to pause the video there for a second because I just started playing music over the speakers. Hopefully it's not terribly distracting. Maybe I'll make these videos a little more interesting than listening to my dumb voice. So I have my dimension command started. This isn't 100% good or bad. I haven't really trying to figure out when and why it will and will not work, but if you dimension from point to point, it sometimes works, and sometimes it gives you, if you come over here down to the bottom, there is, let's see here, it is called, well, it's this button here, annotation monitor. If that's not on, you should be able to click it here. So uncheck, check, it shows up down here. If I click on this, you'll get, let's see if I can replicate this. Click here to here versus here to here. So that was point to point versus line to line. Let's see if this does it. So if I come in here and move things around and then do a dim regen, yeah, they still worked. Let me see if I can, like I said, a little yellow exclamation mark will pop up next to the dimension, and you can click on it and say reassociate dimension. I've done that a couple times and it doesn't seem to do much depending on how you select it. Let's see if we can get one to show up. I'm going to click there. I'm do this pretty sloppily, just see if I can get something to do what I'm looking for. There, I did it. This one. So what we're trying to avoid is that. If I click on this and move over here, and then do the command dim regen, these, without the yellow mark, all moved into the right where we had them prior. This one stayed here and there. So let's try to see if this. If I click on here and reassociate, and instead of point to point, I do, see, it's only letting me do point to point. There, and there. It didn't do anything. Let's try that one more time. There, there. Reassociated it, but I believe if we move again, dim regen, and I'll see it work there. So, as far as I can tell, there isn't it's a bit odd, but I think if you dimension from line segment to line segment, you run less of a risk for having that error pop up. So I'm going to start dimensioning this part. I always try to. The book talks about a spacing that you should try to maintain. It's something that you really can't in the grand scheme of things because these parts are really basic. You'll probably be working on much more complex parts and assemblies. So try to keep uniform spacing throughout your dimensioning. Don't just plop things everywhere. Try to keep them nice and neat. But the spacing they talk about is 10 millimeters from the base of the part, and then 6 millimeters from each dimension. So that's 3/8 in inches and a quarter. So that'd be, let me just here to here. Oops. So 3/8 like that, and then I'm dimensioning this wrong. I'm going to delete these, and then I can hover on that point here, and I say I'll go up a quarter. Yep, see, I dimensioned from point to point, so I'm immediately getting that exclamation mark. So now if I do, instead of that, dimension here, I'll show you another thing you can do. Here to here, we're going to go up 0.375, and then from here to here, I want actually that to be my first one. So if I click here, it gives me the option to move this one up and away. So it's not the end of the world if you dimension and then have to move one to another location. All right, I'm just keep dimensioning here. I tend to always get your overalls in there. Line to line. Move away. We want here to here. We need to know this. Okay. I think that should do it for that one. This kind of is a given that these have the same height, but usually shouldn't necessarily always depend on people assuming things. So 0.375. You tend to want to keep your dimensions in between views. I know I don't have one up here, but tend to always go up and in between a view. That's, once again, not always going to be doable. This dimension here makes more sense because it'd have to cross all the way over here to put it on this side. So it's just you just learn a best judgment of where to place dimensions, where they'll be most useful for whoever is making it. And also in terms of placing the dimensions for how that part would function, what dimension is more meaningful for the part to actually mate to another part in an assembly. Got an overall here. 0.375. Okay. AutoCAD can be kind of a pain in the butt sometimes. Okay, so to dimension the hole itself, once again, don't dimension this one. We want to dimension where it appears as a circle. That's the opposite when it's a solid part, such as a cylinder. You want to actually dimension it where it looks like a rectangle. So I'm going to go dim. Just select on the edge there. And then always kind of place it between 30 and 60 degrees, coming from and going up from the hole. So we have two of these, so we can do at the front of it 2x, or at x is not what I wanted, 2x, and then it doesn't go all the way through. If this had gone all the way through, we could just leave it like this, because we can see on this side that it goes through. If it's, for whatever reason, it's not obvious that the hole goes through, you can type at the end through, THRU. I didn't want that. There we go. We want to, I have this set to going down 1/4 inch, so I need to add the symbol for that, which if we come up here, it's not any of these, but we can go down to other, and this font is different than what I'm using here, although the AMGDT has a lot of the symbols you would need, and the one we need is right here, but we can also find it in my font, whichever font you're using. I'm going to share this template with you. I'm using, let's see here, MS Gothic. And if you scroll down some, just keep an eye out for it. There's a ton of symbols in here. Here we go. Here's a bunch of arrows, and it should, okay, so that's the one way we need here. Downward arrow from bar. Hit select, copy, come back here and Control V. Or I should be able to right click, paste. Then I want 0.25. For whatever reason, it doesn't maintain the same font settings. So I want this to be 125 and it to be, I'm just gonna force it into going, okay, they're all the same font now. And that's how you do. I'm gonna make some changes to this part when I'm done here to show you some other options for different types of holes. I think that should be good for this. We're gonna kind of trade off on some of these drawings to see if you hand this drawing to another classmate, can they make this same part with the dimensions you had put on there? It should kind of help you recognize the things you miss. These two actually we can increase the precision on this. So come down to primary units, precision. So instead of 4 decimal place is 5, and that's the full number of those dimensions. So I can create my PDF, print it off, and hand it off to somebody else and see if they can create the same part that I did using the dimensions I used. So I'm going to make some quick changes here, and then I'll show you what to do with them. So I made a couple changes here. I added some rounds and fillets and a chamfer. I've also changed out the hole to be a counterbore and to go all the way through. So I'm going to move my views over here because I also changed the width. As you can see with the way I had dimensioned it, everything stayed associated to the right lines I had selected. So that just takes practice. You can easily mess up, but they're generally pretty easy to fix. There's if you have this on, there was that dim reassociate. You can also type that in, dim reassociate. Or obviously you can also just delete the dimension entirely and start over from scratch. So I'm going to move my views over a little bit here. I'm going to type dim regen. Everything move back into the right spot. I'm going to select this one and do a dim reassociate. Let's see if this works. There we go. So with these counter bores, I want this hole on the top line and then the counter bore on the second line. So I'm going to double click on this, press enter. So this first line here, let's see here, we might be able to do something fancy here. Right click, insert field, let's go objects, object, click on the right here, select this, and let's see here, diameter, and decimal, everything seems, let's just see what kind of options we have. Yep, okay, that should work. So prefix, we should be able to put a diameter symbol, which, one moment. So if you have a symbol you want to put in to really anything, there are what are called alt codes for symbols on Windows. So we can do alt code diameter. And so alt code for diameter seems to be 0216. So I'll come back to AutoCAD here. And I'm going to hold down the alt key, which is the button right next to the spacebar. 0 on the numpad, 216. There we go. R0 is being suppressed on all those, so I'm going to do 0 suppression on there. Click OK. OK. So that looks a little different. I wonder if that... there was an uppercase and lowercase. The lowercase code was 0248. Let's see if that looks better. Alt 0248. And okay, okay. Yeah, it's not matching up perfectly, but should be good enough. We could do through on this or just leave that as that. That should be good. Now we need the symbol for counter bore, which regretfully isn't one of these here. So we'll go other. There it is here on our AMGDT. Let's see how that looks. Copy. Come back here and paste. Let's hit the delete key. There we go. Make sure it's on the same text height. See what it looks like. Bold. That should be sufficient. Also, kind of want my justification to be well, if you can't find it up here, oh, there's justification right there. I want top left. That looks terrible. Middle left. Let's try. That still looks terrible. Alright, I'm just going to leave it like that then. So that's the proper way of showing a counter bore. I think I got, let's double check on our text height. Something doesn't look quite right. Alright, that's good. Not a big fan of the diameter symbols not being the same, but that's fine. I used an 1/8 inch round on all of my fillets, so instead of going in there and dimensioning each of these, you can simply just add a note. So text, that is huge. I'm going to just type text. Right here. Text height, that's why that was huge. I'm not sure why it's so big. 0.125. Rotation 0. And in all caps, rounds and fillets, colon, R 0.125. So all rounds and fillets are 0.125 unless specified. Now I'm going to do a little OCD here. That's good. And then to show we have a couple different options for our chamfers. I tend to use just the 2 dimensions. So it's 0.5, 0.5. So I'm going to use a liter. So M liter, ML, so the M liter. And specify arrowhead location. So I want basically the midpoint of this. Place that kind of in line with this one. And that's just going to be 0.5 x 0.5. Looks like our font might be a little big. Make that an 1/8. And that looks good. So I want you to start dimensioning each of the parts you made, and then sharing those drawings with each other to see if you can replicate those parts using those drawings.